Live. All right, all right, all right. Once I've interviewed Matthew McConaughey, and I was waiting for him, like I was waiting for you today, and then I see the camera that is black and only the mic active, and I just hear, all right, all right, all right, and I think, okay, Matthew McConaughey is in the room, so it was
yeah, some of those like super memorable lines. He's like a great sort of soundbite kind of person, I feel like.
Yeah, and also recently I saw him giving a speech, political speech. It's just really, some people are just really good with their job. And about jobs, I want to talk about with you today, and not only. But you said that you studied in UK.
Yeah. So I was at Oxford for undergrad. I majored in economics. I specialized a bit in labor economics. So I've been into jobs and into the labor market for a long time, honestly.
All right. And how did you go from Oxford to New York? I mean, you just came back? It was like...
Yeah, so I was born and raised in New York. So New York's my home. I knew I wanted to sort of live my more professional life in New York and my more adult life in New York. So I wanted to get out of there for college.
Right, got it. And what did you do when you came back?
It was immediately, I started Palette towards the end of my senior year at college. So it was right after graduating, about almost 2 years ago now. We'd started this company. And for quite some time, we were sort of, trying something out here and kind of pivoting around and trying something out there. But I've been working, really haven't had any other full-time jobs since graduating.
Right, got it. Interesting time to start, by the way, even full pandemic, I guess. It was 2 years ago. So you just got the right, you say, I'm going to start a new company right now. That was good.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because so much of my experience kind of being a tech founder has been informed by the pandemic, right? In the sense that we raised around $7 million of venture capital at this point, and I haven't been to San Francisco yet. I've never been there in person. And I think it's just sort of like a sign about how much the times are changing.
That's incredible. Is it Palette a solo founder? Are you multiple founders?
No, so we're a founding team of 4, actually.
Right, okay.
So one I met when I was 6 years old in lower school in New York, and then another one we went to high school with, and then someone we met in college. So it's a nice little group.
That's interesting. At least you met before launching the startup, because there are some crazy stories of founders that basically they never met, or also super tiny startups. Streamer, for instance, I mean, they were 2 founders and they sold for 250 mil, the company. And I mean, with, I don't know, 10 people, 50 people, it was a very, very tiny startup. So it's incredibly how remotely you can do a lot. But yeah. I wanted to ask you this. I started to see Palette used by interesting people. So which are usually, I don't know, a little bit skeptic, of using platforms. So when I start to see, I don't know, I don't want to give advertising to anyone, but I saw some interesting people and I thought, wow, I mean, they all use Palette. I got that kind of feeling, maybe because it's my bubble, I'm tech biased. But I was wondering, how did you manage to reach such an interesting group of people that started to open their job board on Palette?
Yeah, I mean, well, so to an extent, it was kind of like a stroke of luck, honestly. So initially what we were doing with Palette, right, because the idea behind Palette has always been to build this sort of like modularized recruiting network, right, where there's a bunch of little mini recruiting platforms inside of a bigger one, because I think it's much more efficient for a whole variety of reasons. But initially the way that we were doing that was we built a consumer platform first. And this was what the first thing that we were working on was, and we had the consumer platform, we called it Spotify for jobs, right? And so you'd have a bunch of little playlists of jobs that were curated around some sort of thematic structure. And the idea was that if we could take that product and scale it to a large enough user base, we would then have the cachet to have other people build on top of us, right? Hey, we have all these users, we have all this activity. You could build your own little recruiting network on top of the Palette network, right? Or the Palette platform. And we got introduced to Lenny Chitsky, who's a sort of angel investor, Substack writer, big Twitter audience, like really prolific guy. One of the de facto, I would say, like leaders on the topic of product management, particularly.
Right.
And I was sort of like, hey, do you want to come and curate this list on our platform, or whatever I was talking about? And he said no. He said he had no interest in doing that at all. But he did need a sort of a back end built for all of the recruiting stuff that he was doing, and he wanted like a full suite sort of recruiting toolkit. And can we do that? And I remember just being in the call on that moment, and it was not what we did at all. But sort of thinking to myself that like, hey, this is a really big opportunity here, and we could put the forget about the consumer platform. Let's just go right to the meat of the structure, which is other people building. And so I said, yes, of course we could do that. And I told the team that we have 2 months to get a new product ready and new product ready to go. And we were lucky enough to get introduced to Lenny in that situation. And I think once Lenny launched and once Lenny started doing it, the social proof started to build quite quickly. And we just kept on getting introduced to more of these people, and they decided to run with us, I guess.
Yeah, it's very interesting approach, I think. I see, for instance, all the content creators. If I think about all the content creators that I know, or if I think when I say, look, I need to find a designer, if I post on my social media, I get, I don't know, thousands of email, and it's so difficult to manage all of this stuff, and then you start to use platforms. But you always think, gosh, I'm really in the middle when you have a large community between people who are looking for a job and also people who want to find those ones, but you don't know how to match them. So I think it's genius to go through the influencers or through people who has already a community.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think, kind of when you look at the sort of history of how these tech recruiting platforms have evolved over time, really that first iteration was obviously like LinkedIn, Indeed, these big aggregators, right? Where they sort of said, let's get everyone into one bucket. And obviously those were incredibly financially successful. But they didn't really do much to improve the efficiency of the market, right? Like, I think the best way to look at how efficient a given market is, like, how strong are the service providers, like the staffing agencies and so on and so forth. And if you look at like the top 10 revenue earning like recruiting companies in today's world, like the first 10 on that list, first 9 on that list are all traditional legacy staffing agencies. They all earn more than LinkedIn or Indeed or these sort of modern tech players. And then so what you have is the sort of second iteration of these labor marketplaces in tech was what we call like a verticalized labor marketplace, right? Where they sort of said, hey, we see that the big ones are still like pretty inefficient. So we're going to effectively build a tech-enabled kind of staffing agency, right? People are going to apply and they're going to give us a lot of their information, and we're going to find out what they like and what they're interested in, and then we'll be able to better match them. And generally speaking, those worked at least moderately well, and they were quite more efficient than the big aggregators. But then they ran into the problem of user acquisition problems in recruiting. And this is like the death sentence for almost all recruiting companies, which is that if you're building a recruiting specific company, all of your users are going to churn every 3 or 4 months, right? Because someone wants a job in January, in April they don't need a job anymore. And so we look at these different communities, we look at these different influencers, these different content creators as kind of marrying the best of both worlds, right? Where they have this network that's around them that will still surround them whether they're looking for a job or not looking for a job, but they also hold that sort of trust and that curation and that understanding of their audience that you could get with a more kind of hands-on service.
And also, I think the creator is a filter for you for a specific kind of community, because if I talk to my community, you already know they're interested in digital, business, and Web3. So you already know that. It's not like a random, or I don't know, pomp is about, crypto, Bitcoin. You already know that kind of audience is there. And in this case, Pallet is... what's the business model behind? Is a revenue share with the creator or with the influencer? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's revenue share with the content creator, with the community leader, and we really have two sort of models on that revenue share. We take a relatively small percentage when the content creator brings in their own business and their own customer, but we also do a lot of that work to get people customers, right? Because there are a lot of people in a content creator's audience who want to hire, but there's still a sales process. There's still you still have to answer those questions. And very often the people who are in your audience aren't necessarily the heads of recruiting, right? They might be a COO, or they might be, a chief of staff or some sort of product manager, but the people that really control that budget, the heads of talent, the heads of recruiting, we found that we often have to go and sort of sell to directly.
Right.